One. And we are, whoops, not streaming. Where is the stream key? 1 second. Already butchering this. Where's the stream key? Should be a stream key. Huh. Uh, spell it. Well, this is awkward. Hold on. Create new ingress. Well, we're not streaming yet then. So hold on. Copy. The OBS stream key was not working. Weird. Copy paste. There we go. Streaming. All right. So, little technical difficulty, but we'll start again Wednesday. And we are recording Wednesday, October 9th, 2024 at 10:03 a.m. Eastern Time with Mr. Don Jeffries. And for everybody listening, it just the stream key didn't work. So that is, suppose, what better start to a show about conspiracies than Gremlins and the Machines. But your book American Memory Hole, finish it. It's fantastic. That link is in the description. And I was gonna say I'm a conspiracy head. I didn't go to prom. I read CIA Legacy of Ashes. So, I'm a normal dude. But there's a couple things in there I actually didn't know, which is not to sound like a, I don't know, snotty, but like that is unique for me for a conspiracy book. But Mr. Jeffries, please introduce yourself, sir.
Well, again, my name is Donald Jeffries. It's on my books. So that's what a lot of people know me as. I've had, excuse me, 10 books published now. I go back a long way. I like to say that I was awake when almost no one was. I was awake from the time I was a teenager in the mid 1970s, and I was working as a teenage volunteer for Mark Lane, who was my hero, for his Citizens Committee of Inquiry to try to reopen the Kennedy assassination. So that was my wheelhouse issue, got me started down the rabbit holes. Eventually, I just started looking into it. I said, "Well, this is not a one-off issue here. This is massive corruption everywhere." So the rest is history or hidden history, as they say. And so I've just become a full-time writer, and I never thought that I would be in the position where I'd be hearing from people all over the world that are like my work or listen to me or whatever. So it's pretty amazing doing exactly what I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So per the Kennedy assassination, and it's, for if you haven't read into it, I can't help you here. But like so one thing I hadn't heard before, I'd heard, fake defector. I'd heard about, I think it was after whatever small amount Trump did to classify. I think one of the things I had read there, so I don't, that was somewhere between 2016 and 2020, was I vividly remember being in the car with my parents. We were going up to the lake, and I don't know, so I was 27, 28 or something. And I remember somebody reading it on the radio saying that there was a clear bullet hole through the windshield from the front and not a fragment. And then the other thing was transcripts of, LBJ kind of pacing around going, is he dead? Is he dead? Is he dead? And not in a concerned way. Not oh my God, is he dead? But
Yeah.
rather, I mean, more, not to be, I guess, I don't know, crass about it, but more like somebody about to get drafted in the NFL and they're about to be set for life, and they're like, "Come on, Mama wants a Mercedes. It's come on, is he dead? Is he dead?
Yeah.
Are the brains on
Yeah.
Jackie? Woo!"
Yeah.
Like that's what it sounded like.
Well, one correction though, and I didn't know about that either, but LBJ is that was in reference to RFK.
RFK, sorry.
Okay, yeah, because I think everybody pretty much knew that JFK was dead right
Well,
away.
then maybe I think I sorry.
Yeah,
I think I quoted the wrong thing. Then it was some LBJ saying like that bastard will be dead, or is it the day before or the day after? So no,
yeah.
I'm
Well,
quoting it.
they're Madeline Brown, who was again, so many of these people. Um, they get discredited or people think they're discredited. I don't know. Madeline Brown was a woman in Dallas. I never met her or anything. She died a while back, but she claimed to have been LBJ's mistress. She claimed to have had a son by him who died pretty young, and who he didn't, I don't know if he supported or not behind the scenes, but she's the one that told the story about LBJ being at a party at, I think, H.L. Hunt's house, who was the owner of the Chiefs back then, a big oil man, the night before the assassination. And supposedly, I don't know if Nixon or various figures were there, supposedly, but J. Edgar Hoover, maybe. But, and supposedly LBJ told her, after tomorrow, those damn Kennedys won't bother me again, or something like that. So
Yeah,
that's, was she credible? I don't know. That's
sure.
certainly a colorful story.
It's yeah, and that's yeah. The other thing is what you had said about the listening van, the like the semi truck, the kind of
Hmm.
the imagery of like the FBI listening,
Yeah,
18
yeah.
wheeler that it was, but it was from the military and it was to record the fine, which I mean isn't devil's advocate, isn't, the most out of it. Like, yeah, sure, you're getting it's kind of like White House Communications Agency-esque. Now, granted, it's the military, and I'm going out on a big limb to play devil's advocate,
Mhm.
but it's not necessarily that wild to record a presidential motorcade, right? Just for
Right.
like that being said, just to play fair, I hadn't heard about that in terms of recording
No, it's not.
it going through the Dealey Plaza. Can you go into that? Because that's something I'd never read before.
No, I had never read it either. Again, I have to thank Chris Graves and Peter Seacosh, who do a great job researching for me. And I don't know if I found that on my own or not, but I think, and you have to refresh my memory if you just read the book, I believe that came from the House Select Committee testimony. Maybe no, it might have been the ARRB. I think that was the ARRB, the guy, and I forget the guy's name who testified to this. Now, it's
It,
all on his word. He claimed that
it was
this,
an Oswald, not Lee Harvey, but it was an Oswald.
I'm
Somewhere in the
sure.
testimony, it wasn't Lee Harvey Oswald, but in I can see it just I read it yesterday looking at the screen. It was
I don't
somewhere in the
remember.
paragraph it mentions Oswald. I'll try to look. I might.
Okay, yeah, because as I
Regardless,
remember this,
regardless,
well, as I remember the story, and this is my own work, but I write so much and I have so many names and things to remember, and that typically no one's asked me about that yet. So and it was unknown to me, but it's a fascinating story. But it all comes from, and I wish I can't remember the guy's name, but and I've tried to track him down. I don't know if he's still around or not, but he really doesn't have much out there to his name other than that testimony before the Assassination Records and Review Board, which he kind of just dropped that on there. And it is a fascinating tidbit because the idea that they record, because if whatever the reason was for putting the recording equipment there, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be make them
definitely
culpable or whatever,
yeah.
but certainly the authorities in a real investigation would want that and want to know. And I think the claim that something wasn't recorded. I can't remember exactly what it was. Like I said, you've read it recently, but that it's a generally unknown story. And there's so many of those little tidbits out there. I have several of them in there about the JFK assassination, and that even a lot of the researchers, because they tend to go towards the same things. Like they've got it in their mind that this guy, Joanides of the CIA, and that's been pushed by Jefferson Morley of the Washington Post, who was former Washington Post, and he's in the news again now with supposedly new information. I don't think it's new, but they tend to go towards this way. They want to go after a couple names in the CIA that they think were guilty. And I just don't think you can do that at this point. And that's why, I have a whole section on there on the Secret Service, because, and especially after the Trump shooting in Butler, Pennsylvania, the Secret Service should be seen, I think, in a new light, because that, they made the JFK assassination possible. If they'd just done their job that day, he wouldn't have been killed. None of them did their job that day. And in a real investigation, the driver, William Greer, would have been the first person questioned, and the rest of the Secret Service detail would have been right after him, and they would have been grilled, and they would have showed the Zapruder film, and they would have said, okay, what is that? And the other photographs, they would have said, okay, what are you doing here? You had 5 or 6 seconds to react. Why are you kind of staring around and just it was not and not reacting at all? Aren't you trained to react to the sound of gunfire, Mr. Greer? What are you doing? The film shows that you hit the brakes, and 59 people testified that you actually stopped the limousine or at least slowed it down severely. Is that what your training tells you to do? But of course, there was nothing like that. And one of the surviving agent, Clint Hill, who's still alive today, is now making probably a lot more money than I make on my books, just lying about it nonstop. I mean, this is a guy who, one of the people that were out drinking till 5 a.m. in violation of all Secret Service protocol, and is out there bragging now and making money off the lies. And so that's why it's frustrating for people like me. You try to put the truth out there about even something like the JFK assassination, which is probably the most accepted of all so-called conspiracy kind of minutia in the media. But even that, of course, they're still perpetuating the lie. But someone like this is out there, and you said you didn't know this or a couple things in the book, and you're obviously much more well informed than most people. But think of all the people out there that are reading his book, for instance. They may see it on NBC or CNN because they're promoted places like writers like me could never have platforms like that. And people, oh, that sounds interesting. This guy was one of the guys guarding the president. So they don't have anything to contrast with. They're not reading my book to see the other side of the story. So it's, disinformation. I hate to use that word because they're using it against us all the time, but his work is really disinformation.
And to but like I say to to those that say, this show is disinformation or anything, as I
Mhm.
always hold is, yeah, let it all fly. The truth will come out. I'm not totally black pilled. I think people do have critical thinking skills, and I think all information, including disinformation, I think you just gotta let it all fly because I think people will. And so like you're hearing about people who are like, sure, they're reading his book now, but I would also say, I know a lot of people in my parents' generation who, for instance, like watch my show, and these are people who, and I don't mean this in any like derogatory, but grew up parents' greatest generation, kind of Uncle Sam's a good guy.
Yes,
I don't like say I don't look down on boomers derogatorily or because I was born in 1990. I grew up with the internet. You cannot compare the two generations. I grew up with the
exactly.
internet.
Nope,
Like
nope.
where again, instead of going to prom, like I was reading on I was like, what is Operation Northwood in like '07? Like, so
It's
I
great.
don't look, oh, they believe everything. They didn't have everything. But my point is people like my parents who are just, both very intelligent people, but just grew up in that era.
Mhm.
Now you see them very kind of matter of fact, like nothing around JFK makes sense. My point in saying that is the same media that lies to us is also going to lie about which books are being read and which things
Of
people believe.
course.
Like they don't give a fair. So just as a silver lining, that is yeah. But the thing again, the JFK thing is so frustrating because it's not that you look back and say, I don't know, ancient Syria or something, or ancient Rome, and you're trying to find things. You're like, well, we can't find more documents. And it's like, well, it was so ancient Egypt. It's like it was so
Mhm.
long ago. The only things that exist are, paintings on the walls of the sealed tomb of the emperor of the day, the pharaoh. You
Mhm.
don't have Instagram posts lying around. So that's one thing to look at and go, there's not the only thing that survives is literal rock.
Mhm.
There is a similarity between that and something like JFK, where, of course, 63, there's no internet, but it was also, if it is a conspiracy, which I believe it is, if it is a conspiracy, you're never going to find, there's no memo somewhere with Curtis LeMay and LBJ's fingerprint on it that
Exactly.
says, we're
Exactly.
killing Jack Kennedy tomorrow.
Yeah.
They're not they're
Uh,
evil. They're not stupid. So it's
yeah.
frustrating in that you have these reports, did his mistress really say that? Was it colorful? Was
Mhm.
it,
Mhm.
but at the same time, that's the only thing you're going to find near it. You're not going to
That's
find
exactly right.
you're not going to find
Yeah.
the LeMay in front of a camera. Hi, Curtis LeMay here.
Mhm.
Today's Christmas Day, 1963. We killed
Yeah.
Jack. Doesn't
Yeah.
exist.
Exactly.
So
I've made that same point many times that the people that are breathlessly waiting the release of the files and everything obviously should have been released a
sure.
long time ago. But you're right, there's not going to be a memo detailing the plot.
No.
They're not going to say, okay, here's who involved, CC all the people, Curtis LeMay, J. Edgar Hoover, or whatever,
Yeah.
and Alan Dulles. But, what we can do is, again, that's why I try to get the people to stop going after this trail of a couple dead CIA agents or something. This is not, and this is the critical community is always, that's why I've always been at odds with them. They're always wanting to say it was rogue CIA agents. Maybe it was some mafia people. They don't, no, this was an institutionalized killing. The entire establishment went behind this. These are powerful forces in the Pentagon, powerful forces in the CIA. Yeah, who knows? Mossad may have been involved. I don't know because Israel was at odds with him at the exact same
Sure.
time. And we didn't learn about that for a long time too. That he was in a war of words with David Ben-Gurion at the time about the nuclear war. That was covered up forever. The original critics didn't know that. So lots of people had a motive to want him dead, but there were no rogue agents to win. Because again, if this had been a rogue CIA agents, then the media wouldn't have acted the way, even with Operation Mockingbird, I don't think they would have protected rogue CIA agents.
No.
And we see today they're still so committed to this lie. They're committed to all the lies, but they're committed to this lie, especially because it's the most popular so-called conspiracy theory. It's always gotten the most play. I mean, even 9/11, 9/11, they just pretty much ignore it. Like JFK, they would let Mark Lane and a few other people once in a while on TV shows and give them, the thrust of the program was always that Oswald did it, but they'd give them a little time to make their points, their sound bites. Nobody that's talking about 9/11 truth has ever been on any of these shows. It's always, you know, firefighters talking about and survivors and pulling at people's heartstrings about what happened. So there's a huge difference, but they're committed to these lies. And eventually, they may eventually open up and say, well, okay, this is, Oswald had connections to a few isolated people or something. There are institutions involved. And the critical community will fall for that. I argue with them all the time. I don't see there was a huge, maybe you don't see there was a huge community. It's 60 years later. And everybody from, every actor in Hollywood except Oliver Stone, Howard Stern, all these, they're all committed to the lie. They make sure they let you know that, as Richard Belzer, the late comedian who had the same publishers as me, and I knew his co-writer very well. He came up with that line, 90% of the people know that JFK was killed by a conspiracy, and the other 10% work in the media and government. That's the way it is. That's the way it is. And so they're committed to these lies. And so that's at this point where we've gone way beyond the JFK assassination. So you look at something like what's going on in North Carolina or anywhere, and
Hmm.
people instantly, I mean, with what you're saying, you're being fed nothing but lies. The eyewitnesses are being ignored. They go back to JFK, they're being ignored. They're being ignored in Springfield, Ohio, with the Haitians and the cats and the dogs. They're being ignored in North Carolina. We have tons of them saying, hey, FEMA's blocking relief efforts. No, it's all FEMA started a disinformation hotline. I mean, this is where we are. Everything is a lie. So that's why I've had flat earthers on my show. I'd like to get hollow earthers, computer simulation people, because we're being lied to about everything. There's no reason to accept anything they say at this point.
Yeah.
I just assume whatever they report is fake until proven otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you do get to a point where it's like early on there's like the taboo ones where it's like Alan Watts said about a taboo. A taboo is just a layer of an onion, and once you become okay with one taboo, there's a deeper taboo and it never ends. But
Mhm.
no, that's where I am now, is where I'm just like I accept nothing. And that you also have to be careful as to not just go into full like psychosis, like they're fucking lizards from a and full disclosure, they might be. But I'm
Yeah,
with you in
that's right.
that I'm now open to hearing things. I'm not
Yeah.
I've had on a flat earther guy where I was like, no, I don't still, it was a cordial conversation. I told him beforehand, I was like, I don't believe in it, but I'm willing to have you on. I'm not gonna, make a mockery of it. And the only thing I walked away from with that I actually kind of thought was interesting was, if it's a plane of, if the world is actually, 100 times bigger than we think it is, he was like, well, that you could then, enforce an idea of resource scarcity. And I was like, I hadn't heard that before. I had always, my thing was always like, what's the benefit of it being, but my point, and I still don't believe it's flat, but my point is what you're saying is I'm much more open now to where it's like,
Yeah.
hey, bring the facts to the table and let's see what they are. And it might be the Kennedy administration, it might be that Oprah Winfrey's a lizard, and I'll listen. If it's not there, I'm gonna say I don't think it's there. But I'm with you. I'm much more open to it now, and
Yeah. Well,
it's
that's why I don't have any, people tell me, I don't get offended when they call me a conspiracy theorist. I mean, I'm a conspiracy analyst, like Gore Vidal said. But these people say, you think everything's a conspiracy? Well, yes, I do, because we're being run by conspirators. This is the way they do business. They don't know
but
any other way.
it's also world history.
Yes, I mean
You know,
you either and you see the quotes in my book and my other hidden history books. I talk all these noted figures talked about. History is written by the victors.
yeah.
What is history but a lie agreed upon by Napoleon? They all say the same thing, and they all talk about powers running things from behind the scenes. I mean, they all understood that something is there, and they can't. They even say, like, if you talk about it, you'll be in trouble. So, well, okay, why would that be if it isn't there? And so you see every one of these events, if there's no group somewhere, some shadowy group manipulating all this, then you wouldn't have the constant body counts. I mean, I talk about it over and
Correct.
over, and nobody's surprised at it. Nobody's surprised when somebody comes out, the DC Madam, Deborah Jean Palfrey has this list of all these big, honchos in DC. who I guess were probably less perverted than most of them, if they're actually going to adult prostitutes, I presume. I think
Mm.
that's so. I guess you have to look at them. Well, maybe they weren't so bad. But she goes on Alex Jones back in the day and says, "Look, I can tell you, I'm not suicidal. I'm not going to kill myself." So millions of people heard her say that. A week
She
later or
was
something,
dead
she's
right
found
before testifying.
yeah, hanged in her mother's shed or something. So they do this all the time. Isaac Cappy out there in Hollywood is
Hmm.
making all these things about, hey, naming names, all these people that are involved, and Steven Spielberg and Tom Hanks, all these people that are involved as pedophiles or whatever. And then he supposedly jumps off a bridge. I mean, we see this thing all the time, and nobody's surprised. They just go, okay, I better keep quiet. Well, why would you? But you're calling me a nut for talking about this. So it's same thing with all the people in the JFK assassination, all the witnesses. I've told them all the time, said, you think all these people were making it up that got threatening phone calls? They were told by FBI agents in Dallas, like, you better not talk. We found a rifle up there and a guy in the window, and that's all we're willing to accept right now. Somebody told them exactly that. And they were warned. Many of them talked about that. Go to 9/11 or any of these events, Oklahoma City. So many people reported being threatening. Who was threatening them? It wasn't the family of Oswald or the family of Timothy McVeigh. These were obviously some kind of conspirators or somebody that had a vested interest in covering it up. But people don't look at it that way. They always want to limit it. And that's why the research community in JFK really, my book, especially Hidden History, has done really well, much better than I ever thought it would, but it's no thanks to them. They've
Mm.
ignored it. I thought they would be like a natural demographic for me, and I'd start from there. And they've ignored the book because they don't believe in any other conspiracies, so they think I'm crazy for thinking all this other stuff happened. It's just JFK. It's just JFK. It's very limited, very limited. Okay, sure. So why 60 years later, they're still every time you see the media talk about it, it's a lie. Except Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson talked about it, and they went crazy over that. They didn't like that, and I said, I don't understand. Whatever Tucker Carlson is, he's on national television saying the government killed JFK. Isn't that what you always wanted? Oh, he's Tucker Carlson. It's like, well, I don't care who it is. No other journalist has ever done that, but they hated him because of Trump. So that's why you can't get anywhere there either. That's another thing, we go into Trump, but that he has polluted the waters of JFK research, especially because so many people, especially when he alludes to it kind of himself, which he will. Roger Stone uh, was the first notable person to contact me about my book Hidden History, and he loved it. And he wasn't really in the news then. I wasn't even. I knew he had written a book about saying LBJ because he's one of the guys that thinks LBJ orchestrated the JFK assassination. But I didn't know. I knew he worked for Nixon as a young guy, had a big tattoo of Nixon on his back. So I thought, okay, this is a colorful guy. But he loved my book, and he ended up writing the foreword to the paperback version, and that's by far my biggest seller. But he told me on the phone Trump was about to announce for president. He said, "This guy's been my best friend for 30 years," and he said, "You're gonna love him. He knows about all the conspiracies." I said, "Oh, really?" So that's what helped really started making me support Trump in 2016. And I said, "Wow, maybe he's," and he did always throw those tidbits out there. He
Hmm.
still does. He teases people. He gets in an argument with Joe Scarborough and he tweets out about the intern in his office. And, that's another,
Mm.
people sweep that under the rug. He had a young girl that was found dead from a head
Yeah.
wound in his office when he was in Congress, swept under the rug, no investigation, nobody talks about it. So there's so many of these things out there, but people I think enjoy my books because I do try to find those kind of things that people, oh yeah, I remember that they'd forgotten about.
Yeah. I've just in general found that to pay really no mind to anyone. And that doesn't mean, not take input from the outside. It's just, you're a conspiracy. Like that means nothing to me. I used to be like defend why I'm a conspiracy theory. These are
Mhm.
now I don't. It doesn't reg. I'm just like yeah, whatever. I don't. And it's and then within the conspiracy community, there's also never good enough. Again, it's Tucker Carlson. He's talking about JFK assassin, controlled opposition. It's like
Yes,
you
yes,
will never
everybody's in.
have. You
Oh,
will.
yes.
You will. It's handed to you on a platter, and you're like, that's not it. Which is
Yeah.
fine. Okay, sure. Keep stay eternally critical. Fair enough. But
Hmm.
again, you just have to eventually realize that like you're not gonna get the people that don't want to be convinced won't be convinced. The people that know it's real but are scared to say it are pussies and they don't deserve respect. And the people that don't understand it are too dumb or have their head willfully in the sand, and you can't. So it's really those who want to know will know, and those who don't won't, and those who can't. And there's really no, it don't. I just don't even pay it any. I'm like, I'm going to do my show. I read your book, and we're going to enjoy it. It's you and I here. I'm not looking out at the the live audience and wondering what they're thinking. I
Mhm.
don't. I don't care. I've
Yeah,
never
no,
cared,
no,
and it's
no, neither.
but it's as it keeps going you just, I think the conspiracies are more and more in your face. 9/11, it's already kind of nascent internet, not really cell phone videos, but that's already worlds different than Kennedy. And then
Yes.
COVID, and then, just what 3 months ago in Butler, you could see
Mhm.
within the same day. If anything, that might like retroactively make people look at other things because in the same day, within an hour, you had Trump falls amongst loud noises, and then you have someone being like, they just shot at Trump. And then you see another news
Mhm.
headline that's like, there might have been bangs. And then you see someone else
Uh,
going, I heard there was a shooter. And you go, well,
mhm.
man, I haven't seen. And then 10 minutes later, and normally these are months and years apart where these things happen. I was
Mhm.
watching it as it was happening. Like I was on Twitter. I remember seeing a
Yes.
tweet about it, and it said like 8S or something. It was 8 seconds. So like I sat
Yeah.
down on that like as it was happening, and the it was a decade of conspiracy becoming fact crunched into about 8 minutes where you had one
Mhm.
guy going, I heard there was a shooter, and then you have someone else going, well, I saw the shooter, and you're going, well, and then you see someone else going, here's a video of them going, there's a shooter up there. You go, well, that's a little more,
Yeah.
and then you see it, find another video, they zooming in, they go, there's a guy crawling. You go, well, that could be
Yeah.
anybody, and then you go, there's a guy crawling with a rifle. You go,
Yeah.
well, I
Mhm.
don't, and then you see a cop go, I went up there, there's a guy with a gun. You're going, holy shit. And it's
And they
uh,
did nothing. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
And that's why it's so relevant because of or whatever it was. And it's so ironic that I heard from people instantly. People were contacting me, because I never, unless I said, on Saturdays I get together with my brother-in-law, my son, and another guy, and we have dinner at a place, and we come back and watch the Three Stooges. So, so I
hell
said,
yeah.
unless they're going to burst in on the Three Stooges, I didn't know what was going on. I
Yeah.
don't watch the news, and so I would have gotten it from Godlike Productions or some conspiracy place later on social media. But my friends started, texting me, and one of these guys is one of the many people in my real life that, that don't support any of my work, think I'm a nut, disagree with me and everything. And he instantly texts me and said, well, I hope you're going to be saying and writing something about the fake Trump shooting. So I said, wow, so these people, they finally found something they thought was fake. And so that you had something like Keith Olbermann, you had, who's a complete lunatic, one of the worst cases of Trump derangement syndrome I've ever seen. Joy Reid, another, class, both of them on the air saying that this was fake. Trump was really shot. So, and I said, these are the same people that want to lock people like me up for talking about Sandy Hook and the Boston bombing, and the ones that applauded Alex Jones's prosecution. So I said, so they finally, so now you think crisis actors and fake blood are right. So now you think they did it, right? Okay, so you jumped on board the fake bandwagon.
Yeah.
But there's certainly lots to question there. But the first thing, and that's why it gets back to the JFK assassination. The Secret Service didn't do their job at all. But that's why, for people, you may not be familiar, but I call Trump, I call it the Trumpenstein Project, and I think he's an actor. I think he's designed to divide the country. But Trumpenstein was on full display when he went back to Butler the other day to talk, and which looked like a courageous thing. But he's up there on the stage, and he starts again talking about how great the Secret Service was. It's like, this anytime they made whatever, if you had gotten killed and it was a real shooting, it would have been 100% the fault of the Secret Service. 100%. They didn't respond to witnesses. You said they had witnesses telling law enforcement, "Hey, look, there's a guy, and this guy walking around with a rifle." And apparently he was, I guess, riding his bike and had his own ladder. I mean, all these crazy stories. Could you be more conspicuous than that? And law enforcement didn't think that was, worthy of confrontation. And then he's seen climbing up the side of a building with a rifle on his own ladder. And again, they do nothing. And they had like what 30 minutes or something like that to react. They didn't at the very least say, hey, Trump, you better not go out on stage. Let's wait till we find out what this guy is doing here. No, instead they go, and then even after he was shot at or whatever, he jumps up in the Iwo Jima photo and pumps his fist, and his front, just like Lee Harvey Oswald, his front was completely unprotected. The agents did do. I mean, that broke every protocol. That one of the DEI woman was ducking down instead of pushing him down, and he's thanking them and talking about how great they were. So that's why it's so hard for people when people want to, talk about Trump. It's like, okay, then explain that. Explain. He should be criticizing it. He criticizes everything else. Why isn't he saying they should all be fired? And they should. I wouldn't want, so that's but it'll never be investigated. And eventually you can already see the Republicans, the Democrats are mad that they didn't kill him. And they're openly saying that, oh, what'd you miss? And nobody cares. And the Republicans are basically going to come around to blaming Iran. And they're already kind of doing that. And Trump will be the leader one, somehow the Iran got to my secret. They won't even mention the Secret Service, that I don't know, but that's why we've gotten to this point. That's why the history is important because you go back and see we didn't get here by accident. And my book has, we go back to FDR and FDR, you see there plenty of documentation for him inventing cancel culture in the 1930s, where he was getting his critics fired. He was, they didn't have social media, so he couldn't get them thrown off Twitter or whatever, but he got them fired from radios and newspapers and television, not television, radios and newspapers and magazines. He had Hollywood in his hip pocket. Hollywood wasn't about to say anything critical of him. And this was before we got into the war. And then once we got in the war, you can see what he did. He imprisoned lots of draft evaders, which he had back then. They were treated terribly. And that even more importantly, we look at what happened to, we've all heard, again, this is why people know a tiny snippet of history. And usually they know it's completely a lie what they know. But they do know that the Japanese were incarcerated. We had concentration camps in World War II for the Japanese Americans. Oh, it's terrible. And the only reason they get talked about is because they're not white. So they got some kind of reparations. Some of them did, some small reparations, but they don't talk about the German Americans and Italian Americans were put in camps too. Nobody talks about them. Guy wrote a book about it. He didn't even know. He said, "Really?" And I said, "Yes, it's very easy to find out there. It's documented." And in my book, I show how they stole the homes and the businesses of all these people that they put in concentration camps. Billions of dollars worth of businesses from German Americans alone they stole, and they never gave them back. At the end of the war, they let these innocent people out who just had the wrong ethnicity. They let them out. They lost their homes and business, and nothing happened. They didn't get reparations, and nobody talks about it. And it paved the way for what we see today, the asset forfeiture program. That was just basically assets, they just stole property and they're still doing it. You can see a thread in American Memory Hole if you go back to the Mexican American War and certainly in the Civil War. You see this was a common thread of the U.S. military forever is theft. When they weren't raping, they were stealing. They were stealing in a whole grifting operation. General Sherman in World War II, I talked about that from the Union lieutenant soldier that blew the whistle on it without intending to, and talked about how, Sherman's got enough gold and silver to start his own bank. And they got that from stealing from people, stealing from the women of the South when they didn't burn their homes down or destroy their crops or rape their women. They stole property and they're still doing it. So you go up the world, so when they did something like stealing the businesses of the Germans and Italians and Japanese during World War II. That was par for the course. That's what they do. They steal and they don't acknowledge they do it. And that's why I said when you look at today, when you look at the kind of people we have in charge today, it seems like a long road from Abraham Lincoln to Kamala Harris, but it's really not. They have the same mindset and they're following the same, shadowy masters behind the scenes.
Give me 1 second. I got to use the restroom real quick. Tell everyone where to find the book and Twitter, all that good.
Okay. Well, you can find first of all, if you want to follow my work, Substack is the best place. Donald Jeffries at substack.com. It's called I Protest. That's the only place I'm not being shadow banned. Everywhere else I am. I mean, you can try following me on X. The things have eased up a little bit there since Elon Musk took over. That's at Don Jeffries on Twitter X. American Memory Hole, the court historians promote disinformation. It's available at all the standard places you can find it. I don't care where people buy it. I'm happy if you just suggest it to your library and have them ask them to purchase it. I get a sale the same way. It gets in the hands of more people, and it won't cost you a penny. So wherever you want to look for the best deal out there is what I always tell people. I don't have a preference. Amazon, I understand what Amazon is, and I understand if you don't want to buy it there, that's fine. But for writers, Amazon's important because the numbers are important. And it's the only place where you can see the sales figures and reviews and stuff like that. So I'll be grateful if you support my work.
So instead of kind of continually going down about all these other conspiracies, which I wanted to do, I'm not. Now, kind of more curious then, what do you believe the big picture is right now? I don't mean like, world history big picture. Yeah, it's like of course there's a cabal of people who control and rape and pillage. That, that's a given. But right now, so if Trump's an actor and Trump's an agent, which I'm not opposed to that idea. I'm not 100% there, but I'm not at all opposed to, again, with you. Like, I really just don't accept anything at its face anymore. What do you think is so if Trump's an agent, what is what is happening right now? What's a sit rep on it, just in your opinion, your 100,000 foot view? What who's controlling right now and what is
Yeah.
coming?
Well, that's a good question, and I wish I knew, who was. I mean,
Yeah,
most of my people would
speculation.
say,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, people are always looking for a group, so that most of the people that gravitate to my work say the Jews
Yeah.
or Freemasons, whatever. I think there's something like the Illuminati. I think there's something that's above it all.
Hmm.
I can't, but something is clearly there, and the people that are the politicians have alluded to it. And again, if you look at Hidden History and Crimes and Cover-ups, my earlier books on history. I gave plenty of examples of notable people that talked about, I'm not in charge. There's somebody behind the scenes that's controlling things. And they allude to this over, they understand it. And so they know they can't do certain things. I mean, I don't know what Trump, to the extent of however sincere Trump is, I don't know, if they gave Trump a talk or whatever. Again, I think again, they're just using him as an actor to divide the country. But whatever. The last, maybe the only president in my lifetime that I think thought he was in charge was JFK. He was the last president to think he was in charge, and I think he came from an insulated, wealth. As he said, he grew up. He said the only way the Great Depression was meaningless to me. The only thing a way I learned about it was through the history books. It didn't affect their life at all. They were
Yeah.
that wealthy. So he grew up completely insulated from the average person. So I think, had a really naive view of things, and he thought when he went in, he could do it. He thought he was in charge. There's evidence to think that even at the time of his death, he really kind of still thought he was in charge and he could change things. And unfortunately, he found out otherwise. But since that time, I think that the people that rise to that level, they understand what they can and can't say. I mean, Trump alluded to that in a speech a while back where he said, he talked about, Israel, Israeli and APAC and everything, and how, used to be if you talked about that, you got in trouble. Well, who would you get in trouble with? I mean, why would you get in trouble? He talked about that, so there's clearly a reason. I understand why people go towards there, but there's somebody, and I wish, one of the great questions, and I quote 1984 a lot, because Winston Smith, the hero of 1984, the protagonist, he asked the question that I'm still asking after all these years. And when he finally broke the rule, and he started writing, which we weren't supposed to do, and questioning things, and he said, I understand who, I understand how and all that. I understand it, but I don't understand why. I still don't understand why. I don't understand the ultimate why. I know that these people are eugenicists. And again, in my book, we talk about
Woodrow Wilson.
how Woodrow Wilson, starting the first forced sterilization, he was one of probably the first eugenicists in public life to hold high political office. But since then, they've probably all been. So you see, again, he starts that in 1912 or what it was, he governed New Jersey. And you look over 100 years later, and you see, we can look at the COVID psyop. Was that a grand eugenicist experiment with the warp speed vaccine apparently killing untold numbers of people? Was this culling the herd? I don't know that's what I would look at it, the why it happened. I don't know why else
Sure.
would it be. And if you look at things like these crazy weather that we know they've been manipulating the weather. We know they have geoengineering. No, Nikola Tesla supposedly invented an earthquake machine a
Yeah,
hundred years ago. I don't know
the residence thing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So what happened to that? I don't know. I mean, if they had that technology, you think these evil these guys wouldn't use it? But
Hey, put
uh,
that away. That's a danger.
yeah, that's right. No, but it's no accident that since they admit they've been, manipulating the weather, and we had HARP that existed for a while. They wouldn't let Jesse Ventura in their
Ventura.
headquarters in Alaska. You remember when he had his conspiracy show? So we know they've been doing this stuff. So is it any accident? Is it a coincidence that now we're getting this incredibly extreme weather? And somebody was telling me today, oh, it's just Mother Nature. First, I hate that term, Mother Nature. Say God. I know you don't believe in God, but you want to say Mother Nature. What the hell is Mother Nature? It's just stupid. But it's a feminine way, I guess, of not saying God. But so I said, what does that even mean? I said, but Mother Nature wasn't like that before. When again, I never even thought about the weather for a long time, and as a kid or anything, I didn't know what categories of hurricanes there were. I never heard of hurricane seasons. I didn't know you didn't have the Weather Channel, of course. And I guess if you're going to have a 24/7 Weather Channel, you got to have some exciting weather. But this is ridiculous. And again, if you look at what's happening there, we've gone to the ultimate ends of even most so-called conspiracy people can't believe the stories we're hearing out of North Carolina. I mean, I'm willing to believe FEMA is really evil, but I mean, they're openly blocking rescue efforts. They're making the guy with the helicopter leave the old man on the mountain. No, you can't bring him down, or I'll arrest you. I mean, are all these people lying? That's why I tell the people, I say, now you believe in crisis actors? They must be, what, why would they be lying? It looks like they're living there. I see, signs of devastation behind us. They're all making these stories up that the government is impeding rescue efforts. So how do you possibly what kind of motive do you put on? That's why I say what's the why there? The only why there I can figure is that they want all these people to die. And they want to call the herd even further. And I don't think it's any accident. Again, I don't think the Republicans are good, but
Of course not.
at this point the woke Democrats are just unbelievably evil. And it looks like these things are targeting areas where you would have a lot of Trump voters. And same thing is happening, now we have right on top of this Milton, which is going to be even bigger and better. So, I mean, at what point do people quit? Again, I'm telling you, you never heard of this constant, once in a great while, you'd hear of a weather tragedy. But not every year, hurricane season. Now you have one on top of the other, and they just happen. It's going to Florida, which I guess is one of probably Trump's most important state. It has the most electoral votes. And again, I don't think they're going to count the votes. I don't even know what I'm talking about. For politically speaking, assuming they do, this is where people would be voting for him. So, but and people are questioning it. As I understand, some of the Republicans, wacky Marjorie Taylor Greene is kind of a psyop in herself, but she's interesting. She, I think, has already, has already questioned it. So again, more and more people, as you said, they recognize they're being lied to about everything, so they can look up and they see chemtrails in the sky, and they're told, no, that's crazy. Well, I'm looking up, and again, I can tell you, as a little kid back then, they didn't have chemtrails. Clouds, they weren't clouds. So there's all this stuff that's out there, and the thing we have is when I was an awake teenager in the mid 70s, nobody that I knew, nobody was like me. So I was ranting and raving about what I could back then, and most people were entertained by it, and but nobody else was doing it. There was no they really even talking about conspiracy theorists then, and so I'm just disappointed that I guess more people I haven't been able to wake up anybody. It's ironic because in my family, my son, who's about your age, um, he's about the only one that is really interested in my work and is on board. The rest of them, they either tolerate me or think I'm nuts. But I hear from people all over the world that like what I do. So it's just nobody I know in person. But it's so I obviously haven't personally impacted anybody, but it's nice to look around and see people like you and people like that are awake now. And I think as more and more of us awake, I don't know if we'll ever get to the point where we can possibly confront them or do anything about them. But you think at some point, if we outnumber them, we don't. But if we did, then maybe we could make change happen because there's no reason to keep tolerating this stuff. Do we have a tipping point? If that's really true, what's happening in North Carolina, that should be a tipping point.
Sorry, there's an ambulance going by and I have my windows open like an idiot. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, no, it's the Jews, it's regardless of what it is and is I think like we know what it, in the same way that you're not going to find the memo from JFK, we're going to kill him. In the same way, and this is perhaps lazy, but I mean, and it's also just to I don't know, be critical of myself. It's also kind of like an unfalsifiable thing to be like a true conspiracy would have no evidence. And it's like, well, that's convenient to somebody like me who has to find the evidence. Like, you'll
Right,
never
right.
find it. It's like, well, that's isn't that convenient? But
Mhm.
that being said, just as a thought experiment, I mean, if it is as like tight knit and secretive as we'll never have a headquarters. We're never gonna find, a the first class, where it's like you find a picture of like the Yale rugby class from 1901 or something. You're not gonna,
Yeah.
it might exist. They might have their own record somewhere. Maybe, sure, but you're never gonna find it. But I think we all pretty much kind of know what it is, just knee-jerk reaction. It's like if you had to answer right now, what would you be like? It's the top 1% of 1% of 1%. It's probably the wealthiest people. They're probably all clinical psychopaths. They seem to only wear nationalism or political ideals as a mask, as a way to do something, be it, Muslim this or Christian that or fascist or commie or climate change or trans rights or aliens or what. It's all just they're putting on a mask to play the thing that they need to play in order to get more power, and they do it through supranational means. Nothing is beyond them. False flags, genocides beyond all imaginable, behind beyond your comprehension. Their true, I don't know, sacrament seems to be technological progress. They want to be gods and lords over the earth. They seem to think that might is right, and they're not technically wrong. Why? So that's what it is. And we'll probably never find a document about that. And I would imagine that there's been different groups over the millennia, and there's no honor amongst thieves. If they're truly genocidal, pedophile, mass murderers, then hey, they'll also don't be surprised if they stab each other in the back. It's the. So I would imagine there's probably been different, I guess, Illuminati threads, if you will. I don't necessarily adhere to that has to be a bloodline. Why would that they just go by who is the most capable? I would imagine they're all very high IQ, psychopaths, ruthless, clinical serial killers, hell bent on power. Nothing is out of there is no true fraternal order. They're all bound by convenience or blackmail, and they will do absolutely anything to rule. That's kind of, I think we all would go, yeah. What are they? I don't black, white, Jew. I don't care. They're something, and they're evil. They want technology to go forward, and but then again, so that's the what. But why do they do it?
Yeah.
I really do come back to, as someone that was I grew up, private Catholic school, around 14 or 15, become the edgy atheist. We're all just monkeys. And then that went for like another 15 years. And then I went kind of full circle where I've come back to no, God is real. There is in the same way that there's unfathomable evil, there's also
Yes.
unfathomable selflessness and unfathomable
Yeah.
love. People who do not do things for no other reason than it's truly
Yeah.
they see Christ in others. And you go, why would that priest do that? Why would he spend his whole life at a hospice? And you go, because he's an angel on earth. I don't, in the same way that you can't possibly understand people that rape children. You're just like,
Right.
what is that? Like, I get why he killed Kennedy. I don't, it's bad, but like rationally, I get it. I go, yeah, you wanted to advance your war state and he was getting in the way. It's unforgivable, but I understand it. I understand like Wall Street people that fake crashes and do boom bust. Yeah, they're trying to get money. I don't respect it, but I understand it. Some evil is so
Yes.
depraved that you just can't wrap your head around it. And the alternative of that coin also exists. Some people are just so pure. So again, why are they doing it? I don't think that they're just psychopaths.
Yeah.
I think they praise a dark force,
Yeah.
Satan,
Well,
Baal, Moloch,
you're,
power. Maybe it's just purely
you're,
dopamine. They love it. They love projecting force. I think they truly
yeah.
believe that there's a dark
Yeah.
force.
Yeah, you and I are on the same wavelength. That's what I'm saying all the time. That it's a spiritual battle,
Hmm.
and I think when you have sometimes it be like you talk about the Kennedy assassination, people have always killed people for political
Yeah,
means.
not right, but you
When
get it.
no, but yeah, there's a motive. It's a twisted motive, but it's a motive. But when you look at some of the things we see today in today's world, certainly the entire transgender agenda, what is motivating a mother? I mean, I'm a parent. What is motivating a mother to look at her 3 or 4 year old boy and decide he's really a girl and to push that constantly? Because the 3 or 4 year old can't really, even if they try to say stupid little things like they can't push very much at that age. They can't. They're very malleable, and so they're gonna do whatever their parents tell. So the mother's pushing it, and it's almost always the mother. I'm sorry, women, but it is. And the fathers are not involved in this. Sometimes they're crazy and they go along with it, but what is doing what that's such a dark, and then to allow him to be mutilated. to know, understand, and to be proudly. I've seen the pictures of the crazy mothers, and it's always the mothers standing next to their daughters with their Frankenstein scars on their chests.
They're smiling.
And it's like what that again, that's what's the motive for that? That's an evil, that's a darkness that I think can only be explained by the darkest force, Satan.
Yeah.
I think it's
I,
satanic, and I think that alone. And then you look at something like FEMA, and if they really were, yeah, I understand maybe their motive is, the overall motive is for people to die, but I mean, how, again, it's not assassinating somebody for a political purpose, for killing somebody for an insurance policy. Those are motives. They don't, we can't understand them. People that aren't, criminally insane or whatever, criminally culpable, don't understand that. But something like allowing thousands of people to block rescue efforts, and all those people, they can say they were just following orders, whatever. But again, that's who gave the orders, and that's a darkness. Again, that is satanic, because there's only, you can be bad. Serial killers is about as bad as it gets. But when you get to that level, I think it's beyond, because again, that's darkness. I think that's satanic. Something like that, where you're purposely stopping good people who travel great distances, fly their own helicopters in, trying to help people. As good Samaritans have the goodness of their heart. You're trying to stop them. What is that? That we can't explain that in human terms. What that motivation makes no sense. Your job is supposedly to help. I mean, you're supposed to go and make, to try to clean up disasters. And instead, you're getting in the way of doing that. You're making things worse. And then you're setting up a hotline and claiming it's disinformation. All those people out there are lying. What did they get money for it? Did the conspiracy theorists like us that might talk to them, do we pay them or something? Did they get wealthy off of this, or their disinformation? So this is again beyond, and even something like if we see the what you talked about, how they don't have meetings, and they don't, and although they have Bilderberg and Bohemian Grove, whatever they do at those places, but maybe they have something more secret. I don't know, but at this point, they're coming out in the open, and the Democrats, especially, you have every high-profile Democrat is openly running against free speech now.
mm,
They're openly saying, Hillary Clinton says, people that promote disinformation should be prosecuted.
yeah.
Both Harris and Walls both say, the First Amendment doesn't protect disinformation. That's the new hate speech. And then you have John Kerry recently came out and said, hey, we can't, the First Amendment gets in the way of us governing. Well, it gets in the way of you governing like tyrants. So they're not they're not pretending anymore. So I don't know what the next step is. Maybe they'll finally admit what they're doing. Because at this point, I don't know why they bother to cover up as it is. They have ultimate power. What do you think would the protest would be if they all got on a bunch of them got together, on national television and said, yeah, we sold our souls to Satan. We're serving him. I mean, what could we do? What would we do? You couldn't get people to act, and the military's in their hands. I'm sorry, Q and on and all that stuff. They're not on our side. The police, obviously, after the Black Lives Matter summer, where they were kneeling down with him and not arresting him, and then the way they acted at January 6th, they're not on your side, and the conservatives still act like they are. No, they're not. They're not. They're an occupying army of the state, and the state is corrupt. So. And that's kind of a long-winded way of saying that I agree with you. But so that's why I think everybody, I try when I write on Substack now. I mean, I say that often. We're in a spiritual battle. What side are you on? I mean, we're confronting evil. We're confronting people that I think have been, to whatever degree, influenced by Satan. So we have to be influenced by the good force, by God, by Jesus Christ, and that's what I'm trying to do. Try to be as good as you can, and try. You can point out what they're doing, but you don't have to do it like a born againer and condemn them to hell or whatever. Just point out this is what they're doing. This is
Mm.
really evil, and it looks like they're serving the darkest force possible. So go to the light, serve the good force.
It's yeah, no, good, quite literally go to Jesus Christ. It's
Yes.
and it's so I've been thinking about this more and more of like, well, why wouldn't they just steamroll the earth? Why wouldn't they? And I really do think that, I mean, I think it, to an omnipotent, all-knowing, pan time God, the only real curiosity would be to create beings with free will. if you've existed for a trillion raised to the trillion raised to the trillion raised to the trillion years, the only real curiosity thing worth seeing, because everything else would truly be you would know everything. It's all your own control. No, you know, I'm I'm gonna pick up this chapstick and then I'm gonna drop it. I wonder what's gonna. I don't know. What do you think's gonna happen? I would want to go just out of regardless before we even get to like love and everything. Just be like I wanna not know what happens, and then it starts floating. That's interesting. So not only that, but then in terms of true love and true godliness and knowingness and goodness, you'd go, I want something that can choose, something that has free will, something that is aware. And that's what you would do. And in that same way, the devil, the devil could kill a million things. You go up, a deer, chop its head off, and there's blood. Hey, it's Satan, and you could do all those things, and it does like it. But at a certain point, the devil too would want what would be the most delicious thing. He'd want he'd want to trick someone that would be better than killing them. But even above tricking them, he would want someone to consciously choose to be dark. That's what you would, and if the devil, in its own sense, is a dark god, he's not God, but in the same sense of, powerful, that's what the devil would want. So, your knee-jerk reaction would be like, well, if they're a death cult, why wouldn't they just nuke the whole planet and get rid of it? No, no, they could and they will if they have to, but they have they have their primary negotiating point. They'll settle for this amount of money, but they want that amount of money. They want to turn you. They want you to mutilate your children. They want you to reject Christ, to reject God, to reject your brother, to what is the innermost circle of Dante's Inferno? Treachery, right? That's what they want. That is their sacrament. So will they come out and say we sold it? If they do, it would be because they failed everything else. They want to deceive, but they want you to turn and become dark because that is showing God, here's your creation, and it is malevolent. And so that's what I think it is. And because of that, they'll never be they'll never be, content with a kingdom. They'll never reach a certain amount of censorship or they'll be happy. But they also won't just go about killing everyone and everything because I think they want the free will, the same thing that God wants is the same thing I think the devil wants is he doesn't want to just bomb a town. He wants the townspeople to turn and to knowingly kill each other he wants the darkness. It's Satan. So because of that, they can torture you, they can kill you, they can nuke your city. But I think at the very core, really the only thing that you truly control, all this stuff is beyond you and I's control. We're doing this podcast, right? We don't control the nuclear arsenal, and we could be tortured, we can be sleep deprived, and coerced. But what we ultimately have is the choice to say no. No, I don't do I don't I no I will not remove God from my heart. Now they could skin you alive and boil you, and you might say something in duress, but that's not real free will. That's what they want, and that's what I believe this is, and I think that's why we're here. I think everything else is kind of a backstory, like fossils in the universe, and yeah, that's all. It's all well and good, and if that's what you like, you love, learning about astrophysics, go for it. The same way that some people want to play the piano. I think at its core it is free will is the absolute gem of all of creation ever. And which way do you turn? And I think that's all it is so everything else is kind of 9/11 or the Vatican or the Great Schism or the crucifixion or the Aztec. It's all manifestations of this one thing. Which way do you go? Do you, against all odds and against all self-benefit, do you say, no, I'm not going to turn on my brother. I'm not going to turn on my sister. I'm going to do right in the eyes of the Lord, even if it hurts, even if it's scary. I'm going to do the right thing. And I think that is the conspiracy of all conspiracies, is which way does your free will turn? I know that was a bit of a rant, but it's No, no, no. That's all I got.
Yeah, no, no, you're right. Certainly, I think you make some great points, and that's why, yeah, well, this is not anything new. It just we know more about it because of the internet, and that's why it's very important to try to keep the internet as free as we can. I mean, they're doing everything they can to censor people, and that's why, something like I still have a YouTube channel, but they're constantly suspending me if I say anything about COVID or whatever. It goes down. Still have it hanging on by a thread, but I live stream my podcast on Fridays, and I I just take it down afterwards because they I had an interview with Richard Gage about 9/11 like 7 8 years ago, and they just canceled, suspended my station last month over that. They said it was hate speech 8 years ago. So, okay. So you never know what they're going to do. So it's best just to use it. I use it as a streaming because that's where most people watch and chat, on this. It's a much bigger audience than I get anywhere else. So um, I just use it for that, but I take it down. But that's the kind of thing we have. Facebook is pretty much meaningless to me. I can't, I'm shadow banned thoroughly there. And in terms of my books, Masking the Truth, the COVID book is the most shadow banned book in the world. I mean, Amazon disappeared the Kindle version. Barnes and Noble got rid of everything. No explanation. Apple Books was charging $999 for it. So they're doing everything they can to stop that book. Libraries were putting up brick walls against people trying to get it in there, and they blocked so many reviews. They've just decided. Guy told me the other day he's going to try to review it. They just, they don't put reviews up. So, and that's really the only one of my books that they give to that. So you know how important COVID is, because I write about controversial stuff all the time. But they've shown that this is something they resent the internet, and they hate things like this. They hate the fact that somebody like you can just get your set up and go out and talk, and there's no talking head to filter you. Nobody from an Ivy League university that's going to have to explain, well, this is what he really meant, to filter it for the masses. They hate, the fact that I can do that, and they hate the fact that something like Substack exists. They hated blogs, and now they really hate Substack because, somebody like me can get it. That's the shadow ban doesn't affect me there, at least not yet. So my audience is growing there. And so I can get thousands and thousands of people to read what I'm saying. And again, I just, I'm a community college dropout, and so I'm self-educated, and I can get on there and I can say these things that contradict and what people are hearing from the talking heads and their politicians and the so-called experts. And they hate that. They want the experts to set the agenda because the experts are the mouthpieces for them. And they don't want the common riffraff like us to be able to chime in and influence people because it's just like between Satan and God, it's a battle for souls, basically. And which way are you going to go? They both, want your soul, obviously, and we want to give it to the good force, to God. But in here, it's a battle it's a constant battle between what we're trying to promote truth. And so what they've done is they corrupted that now, and everything is disinformation. You're hearing that constantly. I guess they think that sounds better than hate speech. It's they're both Orwellian, but it's thought crime. So we're committing thought crimes. That's what we are. We're thought criminals. I brag about being, a thought criminal for 50 years, and I pretty much have been. So this is Thought Criminals of the World Unite was one of the articles I wrote, and that's what we need to do. I mean, we need to understand that we're up against great powers, but I don't think they're that brilliant necessarily. They may have some secret technology, but I think they just have power. And when you have power, you can do. I mean, for instance, police officers have great power. Most police forces limit the IQs of police officers. They can't be over a certain amount because they want to keep them dumb and unquestioning. So, but they have tremendous power. They don't need to be smart.
That's a
And
good
sometimes
point.
it's more dangerous when you don't have that much intelligence because then you might be more trigger happy like a lot of them are. But so we're facing. I don't give them the credit of thinking that they're anything special. Maybe they are, and I just don't know it. Maybe they are reptilians and they can they can turn into reptiles. I don't know. They're not showing me that if they do, but I just prefer to point out what they are. I mean, they're corrupt, and I try. If people read my Substack, I think that's why my audience is growing there. I try to use humor there, and I look at everything. It doesn't matter what it is, and I try to find the humor in it, and I try to make fun of them. I'm trying to do what comedians aren't allowed to do anymore. It used to be where you could have George Carlin and people like that would effectively skewer powerful people and powerful things by because you can make fun of them. It's laughable what they're doing. But when you have, the shows that were the Saturday Night Lives and all the late night talk shows, they're all completely compromised. They're all,
They
working
propaganda
for the
now.
state. Yeah, they're propaganda. So, but comedy can be very effective. So that's what I'm trying to use as much comedy as I can in my Substack to make fun of it that way effectively. And it seems to be working, but um, we just have to try to understand and support each other. There's so many, as I talked about the JFK research community, that goes for the entire alt media. There's so many people, as you mentioned before, that think everybody's compromise, everybody's a limited hangout, and it's a they're disinformation agents. And I take everybody at face value. Yeah, I'm aware of what, maybe Alex Jones might be, but I think he's entertaining, and I take him at face value. I've been on InfoWars before, and I've been on Morning Journal with Harrison Smith, and so I don't know if they had me on, and same thing with all these outlets. Anybody, if Rachel Maddow asked me to be on her show, I would say sure. Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't mean I support her. I mean, I'd be shocked,
Like,
but
come on. Yeah, I'd be
yeah,
cordial.
sure. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm going to say, okay, look, and I'm not going to necessarily cue. I'm just going to make my say wherever I go. Some people criticize some of the platforms on it. So wherever I'm going to say the same things. I'm not going to change about it. This is my truth. And if you're letting it out there, this is what I think. And but most people, they want to they disagree with somebody over something, then they have to cancel them, and they do it. The alt media cancels people too. I've been canceled plenty, and I said, well, you shouldn't have said that about the Jews, or you're not talking about the Jews enough. The Jews alone can get you canceled both ways, and that kind of thing. I'm just saying what I say, man. It's just the truth, and all of us should try to support all the outlets out there. But the problem is that there's a lot of infighting. And if we're going to represent, because this all could be everything, there would be no reason for me to, none of my books could have been published if we had real free press in this country, because then they would have told the truth about all the things I'm talking about at the time. They wouldn't have covered it up then, so there wouldn't be any hidden history to uncover. But well, people don't know history anyhow, but it wouldn't be anything, new. And that's what we see now when you see the ongoing cover-ups, the gatekeepers of the president of the mainstream media, the state-controlled media, and the gatekeepers of the past, or what I call the court historians.
Hmm.
And that's what we should be fighting, and not each other. But people still want to squabble, whether it's over Trump or over some kind of ridiculous little minutia. No, the big thing is we know if you understand that you're being lied to, and you understand there's massive corruption out there, and that we're increasingly living under tyranny, then I'm on board with you. We can argue about the details, but we have to get together on that, join hands, and look at the common enemy. And that's the only way we can ever win.
And, to people that don't want, like, I am, as much as I make fun of them, I am sympathetic to people that like don't want to know. I get it. You don't want to find out. It's all rotten beyond your comprehension. I totally, on a human level, I get that. I totally get that. Yeah, don't tell me if this plane's engine isn't maintained. I'm just gonna listen to a podcast, go to sleep, and hopefully I wake up on the runway. Like I do
Mhm.
get it. I understand it, but you have to walk it out to its logical conclusion. And you go, if it is all screwed, and if you have to stand up for the right thing, and well, then you might be killed, and that might be bad. And it eventually comes down to like, well, once you start to understand that it is all screwed and that these people do worship an unimaginable evil, you have to understand polarities and inferences, and you cannot have light without dark. It's not a cute saying. It's up and down, hot and cold. It's just one is by description, the definition of one is it's describing its relation to another. So, what is the an other? Well, if these people worship an unimaginable evil, then there's an unimaginable good. And when you understand that and you go, well, if there's an unimaginable good, then that means that that good is probably looking after me and will lovingly take me in after all of this. And okay, doesn't make it any less scary. I know it makes it a little less scary. I get it. it's still, you can pray to God, and you're like, I know God's looking over me, and then you realize you're like, oh shit, I am still here on Earth. I'm only 34. Like, yeah, no, it's gonna be a bit of a it's gonna be a bit of a ride. I understand that. And it can end absolutely horrifically. But if you can accept God into your heart, Jesus into your heart, you'll find more peace. It's still gonna be scary, it's still gonna be difficult, but you will find you will walk the right path, and it's gonna go forever. It's gone forever, and it will go forever. And if it ends here, it'll be going on another planet. It's a nonstop dance for all of eternity. But just follow that center light. You know which way is right to go. And we'll wrap it up with I'm find out I don't know where I have it. It's a just the it was my background because I liked the quote so much, and I think I got it saved. Here we go. Christ is the only exit from this world. All other exits, sexual rapture, political utopia, economic independence, are but blind alleys in which rot the corpses of many who have tried them. And I just love that. Like, so like, let's just say best case scenario. Best case scenario. Let's say I don't think QAnon's real. I would love if it's real. I would love if there was a cabal of very good people killing
Mhm.
pedophiles. I would love
Mhm.
that. What if it, let's just walk it out. What if it did happen? There's zero point energy at Area 51 and they declassify it, and no more fighting and suffering and life extension doubles. Okay, amazing. You could live along. I could live till I'm 200. I could grow old and have kids and grandkids and great grandkids and help my community. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I die and my kids will die. My great great grandkids will die. And eventually the universe collapses into heat death. Even in best case scenarios, it does all still fall apart. And that's not don't that doesn't mean negative. That doesn't mean don't enjoy and love life, but it means that even in the best case scenario, this podcast makes $100 million tomorrow. My parents are still getting older
Mhm.
with every passing day, as am I. It still is just what is going on.
Mhm.
It'll never I can buy a Lamborghini, cool. That will one day, very quickly, it won't be the thing that excites you anymore. If anything, it'll ruin you because everything that's not a Lamborghini will suck. You'd have a really
Mhm.
nice, everything's great. You'd have people deliver your food and everything, but okay, sure, that all ends. So economic independence, sexual rapture, you still finish. The orgasm's over. It's still all of this. It comes to an end, and that's not doesn't mean don't enjoy life. That's if anything, the fact that it all comes to an end is kind of what makes it so beautiful. The exiting from this existence is through God. It's just what it is. And I don't think I'm a stupid guy. I got into medical school. I scored in the 96th percentile in the MCAT. I think I'm a moderately bright guy. And will find God on a map. I can't. It's all there is. And you can if you're not there yet, hey, keep going at it. I hope you find it along your way. But it's just what it is. And it's the simplest thing. There's really fucking evil and there's really fucking good. Choose wisely. That's So that's my 2 cents. But told you we were gonna go for an hour. We've gone for like an hour and a half. So we'll wrap this up. I have the book in the description. I need to get your Substack. I'll put that in the description as well.
Okay.
And anything else you want me to put in there, put in our email
Yeah,
chain.
it's Donald Jeffries at Substack.com. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
it's that's the only place I'm not being shadow banned, and that's so people can support me. That's the best place to also to keep up with me too, because I write there. I'm getting more and more subscribers, and there's a pay option. I don't have a paywall. Everything is for free. I'm a populist, but people want to support me more. Some more and more people are paying, and that's cool.
Yeah.
Either way, you get the same material. You're just doing. But that's the way to keep up with me. I mean, I write there regularly. I'll be putting up something today or tomorrow about the North Carolina situation. So I'm trying to work on that and put humor into it without being offensive. So that's a fine line. So I got to work on it.
Yeah, I think Bill Hicks perhaps did it best.
Yes, yes, yeah.
He would go on the most angry, vitriolic, seemingly misanthropic rants, and then he'd always
Hmm.
end it with, "But ultimately, God's love is eternal, and God will never turn away from you." I think he said God's love is a lot like the sun. Like you can go find shade, but that's not God rejecting you, and it's your choice and your choice alone. He would go if he'd be so dark, and then he'd finish it with like God loves you. Yeah, it's on the way only Bill Hicks could. But
Yeah, yeah,
dude, I'd love to have you on again sometime. That was super fun, and yeah,
sure.
I'll send you the link to this if you could share it around. And yeah, guys, please go in the description. Go buy his book. Go throw him a couple shekels on Substack. Like you, all my stuff is always free, but if you want to support it, that's cool too, and I appreciate it. So
Yes, yes,
dude,
very
thank you
cool.
so much. It was a pleasure talking. I hope to talk to you again.
Thanks for having me.
All right, man. Thank
Take
you so
care.
much.
Okay,
Thank you.
take care.
Guys, thank you